us at 10, so I'm going to get started. So thanks everybody this morning for joining us for our how to roll out the Microsoft Power Platform event. There's just a couple of quick notes that I need to kind of cover before we get started. So just so you're aware, the session is being recorded and we'll be sending out a copy of the recording after the event. So if there's anybody, any colleagues or anybody that wasn't able to make it, they can catch up later on. Just so you know as well that you're on mute, so we do encourage you to use the chat functionality to ask any questions, and we'll do our best to answer them throughout the session. So I think there's just more people joining there, so I think without kind of delaying any further, I will hand over to our team of experts led by Graham McLean, who's our SharePoint practice lead here at Bridgeall, who will be running the session. So I'm going to pass over to Graham. So thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoy it.
Thanks, Upash. Good morning, everyone. So today I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Sami Hassan and Alan Moss, and they're going to be helping me take you through some background on how to kind of roll out the Microsoft Power Platform. So we're going to be looking at, how to kind of get started with the Power Platform. How to roll it out, how to ensure that you can kind of contain any sprawl and it just doesn't end up as a kind of free for all, and really doesn't end up like Microsoft Access in the past, which is quite a few of our customers are kind of been frightened of. So we're going to show you some good ways to kind of control it, maintain it, and just make sure that you're in control and you've got the governance right. In terms of the Power Platform. So we're going to have Alan Moss is going to take you through the planning stage, and he'll be just showing you how to kind of set objectives, identify some quick wins, and basically set up your Power Platform structure. And then we're going to move on to the rollout. So we're going to be talking about governance and monitoring and protecting, and also a bit about training and adoption. And both Alan and Sami will be covering those areas. And then finally, we're going to touch a bit on licensing, and just having a look at what license options are there, and how you can use them, and what the best use is for your kind of situation as well. And Sami's going to be covering that for us. So before we do that, I just want to jump into a wee bit of background about ourselves. So we're Bridgeall. We're based in Glasgow. We've got 35 staff at the moment, established in 2002. We've focused really on 3 or 4 pillars, if you like. We've got the modern intelligent workplace, which I head up. So that's looking after SharePoint. It's looking after the Power Platform. It's also looking after Dynamics CRM as well. And then we've got managed IT services and support, which looks after all our Azure, all our kind of support contracts for customers as well. And finally, we've got a data, applications, data and AI practice, which, as the name suggests, looks after the kind of custom development aspect, as well as data warehousing and AI functionality as well. And then on top of that, we've got a couple of products. So Smart Crowds, which is our innovation product, and Trevi, which is a product in the water space as well. And across all of those pillars, the section at the bottom there, we advise. So, we're happy to kind of talk to you about, what's the best options, what's the best way to kind of, plan out and to implement. And then implementing, so helping you implement, whether that's SharePoint, whether that's Power Platform, whether that's custom development, and then providing the ongoing support to you as well. So you can see along the top there are kind of main core technologies. We're a 10 times Microsoft Gold partner, and we're also a preferred content services partner, one of 26 partners in the world. So that means that we get direct access to the Microsoft engineering team, around new functionality that's coming out in the SharePoint and content services space. So things like SharePoint Syntex and Microsoft Viva are the kind of hot ones just now. We're also an Azure CSP direct partner, so in terms of licensing, we can procure licenses for you directly, and we're ISO 9001 and 27001 certified as well. Just a variety of our customers there as well. So as you can see from that slide, there's quite a lot, work across the public sector, across government as well, but we've also got a number of private sector companies across lots of different sectors through manufacturing, food and drink, travel, housing, etc. as well. And then just really to set the scene, just before we go in and before I hand over to Alan and to Sammy, just a wee bit about Power Platform. So what is it we're looking at today? What do we mean when we talk about Power Platform? So the Power Platform is Microsoft's low-code platform offering. It's made up of 4 kind of core elements, if you like. We've got Power BI, so an application that can be used to kind of surface data, to display rich reports and analytical data. We've got Power Apps, which is an application development environment, so it allows you to produce applications in lots of different formats. So it's not just really kind of one Power App application. I feel like there's lots of different applications in terms of Canvas applications and model-driven applications and a few others that Alan and Sammy might go into in a bit more detail. And then Power Automate, which is really the kind of, you can think of that as a kind of glue behind Power Apps, if you like. It's powerful, scalable automation framework that can connect a variety of Microsoft and third-party endpoints. So there's a variety of Microsoft endpoints that are published and a variety of third-party endpoints that are published that you can just use out of the box. And you can also go in and create your own kind of endpoints and connectors as well. And then lastly is Power Virtual Agents. So these are chatbots without having to effectively write all the code surrounding chatbots. So you can quite easily build powerful chatbots to plug into various parts of your systems using business language. So you can quite quickly get customers, and whether that's internal people or whether that's external customers, using these bots and figure out what questions they're asking, and then build the service as they're asking questions, and you're getting the metrics to find out what people are asking. So that's quite powerful as well. And each of those components along the top, so they use the components along the bottom. So you've got REST, OData APIs. So that's just really the ability to interact with the data that's in either Power BI or Power Apps or the rest of them. Be able to kind of import and export that data via modern APIs, so that you can either integrate with third-party systems, or you can get data into or out of applications that you've built. Then the data connectors, so whether they are existing data connectors that are Microsoft provided or third-party provided, or whether they're custom created, because you can create your own data connectors as well. It's really the ability to connect to and interact with the data from a variety of different data sources. So that could be things like SAP or other third-party systems, and bringing the data into Power Apps, for example, doing a bit of work in there and then potentially pushing the data back out as well. Then AI Builder, so we've got the ability to allow the applications or processes or everything that you're building using this framework to make use of the existing kind of investments in Microsoft's cognitive services. So Microsoft have got quite a lot of cognitive services that are just kind of sitting on the shelf that are easy for you to consume in lots of different ways, and the AI Builder allows you to do that. So some examples might be image recognition, so being able to pick up on images and train a model to look for certain things in images. Text recognition, so being able to look at things like sentiment analysis, or just understand a bit more about blocks of text that have been put in. Forms processing as well, so being able to identify bits of text in forms and identify form fields, and then split out form fields and be able to use the results of those in your application as well. And then lastly, but not least, is the Dataverse. So really kind of underpinning all this, if you like, is the kind of scalable and robust data repository that can hold your data for applications and processes. And really that's, underpinning Dynamics CRM now as well. So it's, enterprise-wide, completely scalable data model, which you can use to effectively store your data for Power Apps or any of the other applications that you build as well. So together, it's quite a compelling offering, and really, with the kind of lower code end of this, if you like, it's allowing business and IT to work together to kind of tackle a variety of different use cases. So what I'll do is I'm going to hand over to Alan to start covering the planning aspect, and I'll be available on the chat, and I'll just answer any questions that you've got. So if you've got any questions as Alan and Sammy go through, then if you just put them in the chat, then I'll endeavour to ask them, or I'll answer it if I know the answer myself.
That's great. Thanks, Graham, and good morning, everybody. So I suppose to start off with, if we're thinking about planning, so there can be many reasons for why an organisation or company might want to consider adopting Power Platform. These include reduced development times through the low-code interface, the ease of connecting with internal data, having an expanded development pool with the use of citizen developers, as well as the fact that it's potentially more secure hosting because you're actually hosting all within your own tenant. So if you are considering Power Platform as an option, then it's always best to have a route map in place to ensure you can get the most out of the platform. With that in mind, there are many things to consider when you're developing a strategy for adoption, and these include, if possible, quantifying what the benefits are actually going to be for your business, how you're going to set up and maintain the platform so that it's secure and keeps all your data safe, but not too constrictive that it stifles creativity and productivity. You also need to consider where you're going to start, how you're actually going to achieve this. Are you going to, for example, have a pilot user group, or do you have a particular project in mind or a specific business pain point that you want to tackle? And within all of these things, you also need to consider how you're going to communicate the strategy to the rest of the business to keep everybody engaged and to keep the company informed as to how you're moving forward. Within that strategy, it's good to define objectives so you know where you're coming from and where you're trying to get to. One useful way of doing that, to give you a basis, is the first point that I made about quantifying what the benefits are going to be to the organisation. That can be a good starting point. Once you've agreed your objectives, you need to define what the success criteria is going to be for your roller or your trial, how you're going to measure that success, and then once you've done the measurement, review your outcomes and then decide on your next steps. Do you want to expand the rollout to perhaps another business group? Do you need to update your kind of internal processes, or do you want to continue the trial for a bit longer just to gather a bit more data? Associated with all of these things is the roles and responsibilities within the organisation. There's a Power Platform admin role within the tenant, so you need to decide who's going to take on that responsibility. You also need to consider what support you might need from IT going forward, as well as who within the business is going to be driving the project forward, keeping up the business engagement, And also, you need to consider what's going to happen when people start asking the awkward questions like, how do I do this? Where do I find this piece of information? So it's important to identify who your product champions and subject matter experts are going to be, and get them trained up so they can answer all these questions. It's also worth noting that Power Platform is currently it's packaged up with your M365 E1, E3 and E5 licenses. So if you have those licenses, Power Platform may already be in use on your tenant. It is possible to switch off those parts of the license relating to Power Platform, but it's worth bearing in mind that any user on your tenant can actually independently sign up to a developer license, and that is also hosted on your tenant. So even though you're not actively promoting and using Power Platform, it may actually already be in use on your tenant. So that's an important consideration. So moving on from the planning phase, we have the rollout phase. Today, I'd like to touch on 3 key areas for that, being governance, monitoring and protection, and training and adoption. Within those areas, if we take governance first, so governance is about managing the tenant, so the correct people have access to the resources that they need to do their work, while keeping the organisation safe, and in particular the data, but not stifling creativity and productivity, because that's the whole point of the Power Platform, is to encourage productivity and decrease the time from design through to going live with apps. So we're going to look at 4 areas within governance. That is developing an environment strategy, creating data loss prevention policies, the application lifecycle management sphere, and also quite an important part, which is establishing some key internal processes which will help you to monitor and regulate and review how you're using the platform. So firstly, if we look at environment strategies, so in Power Platform, environments are where apps are developed and published. Every tenant has at least one environment, although more environments can be created for specific purposes. So every tenant has a default environment, and any user on the tenant that has a suitable license has maker access to the default environment, which means that they can create apps. We would recommend that this environment is only used for personal apps, really, because it's open to the entire organization. Everybody has maker access, so any important app development shouldn't take place here. They should take place in their own dedicated environments. It's also important to note that any flows that are created through SharePoint are also hosted here, so it does have quite a wide use case. By default, there are no restrictions on environment creation, which means that, again, anyone can create an environment, and this can very soon lead to environment bloat, where you have potentially large numbers of environments that are either unused or have become dormant. This ties up system resources, because you have a finite amount of system resources depending on the licensing that you use. So it's tying up resources that could be best used elsewhere, and it also makes it very difficult for admins to effectively monitor the system. both in terms of use and also the quality of deployed applications. If we can't keep track of what's out there, then it can very quickly become a real mess. So we'd recommend that you establish a process to regulate environment creation. Such a process should consider things like the business case. Why do you need the app? Why do you need the environment? What kind of app are you wanting to develop? Any security requirements that there are around it? Are you going to be dealing with sensitive company data or sensitive customer data? And also what's the available capacity within your tenant? So there are some important aspects that need to be considered there. But with all of that, on approval, you can still automate parts of it. So on approval, the new environment and any policies can be automatically created, which takes a little bit of the weight off of IT and any further admin involvement. But it is an important part. As I mentioned, for larger, more critical apps, it's good practice to separate the dev and test process from the live deployment, and we would recommend doing that using multiple environments. This means that the live app can be ring-fenced and protected from any accidental changes. And also there's the potential for cross-contamination with test data if everything's all lumped into the one environment. We would also recommend using Azure AD security groups to manage your user permissions and access to individual environments. It means that changes in personnel can be easily managed independently of app environments as people move around the organization. For example, if you have a team of half a dozen devs that are working on multiple projects, if you need to create a new environment for those devs to work on a new project, then you're only adding one thing, the AD group, to the environment in order to handle all the permissions and access, rather than having to add 6 people. If one person leaves, then they can be removed from the group, and that would affect all of the environments that the group's involved with. And finally, for environment strategy, if you're provisioning an environment that has a Dataverse instance, it's important to make sure that the Dataverse instance is created in the appropriate region for the regulatory environment that you're working in. If your app's going to be used in the UK, then you would want to provision Dataverse in the UK and not, for example, in the US, where there's different privacy laws that apply. So here we just have a quick diagram just to give you an example of the environment strategy topics that we've been covering there. So at the top, you can see we have the default environment that is open to all. Below that, we have our developer environment, which we touched on at the start. It's really an individual environment. Below that, we have an example of our most critical app. Could be in a company-wide app or a business-critical app, where we have very definite segregation between the development process, the test process, and the live posting. Below that, we have an example of perhaps a department-wide or a business unit-wide scenario where we would develop the apps in separate environments, but they could, depending on the scenario, perhaps share a test or a live environment. So moving on to data loss prevention policies. So one of the great things about Power Platform is its ability to easily connect with many and varied sources. Currently, Power Platform has over 500 built-in connectors that you can access, and these are for a range of both Microsoft and third-party products and services. The list of connectors is building all the time. I think there was approximately 15 added last month, and these the most recent additions included the likes of Spotify and What 3 Words. So you can see there's a very wide range of different connectors that you can use within your apps and flows. These allow Power Apps and flows to easily consume and surface data to internal apps, but not just internal apps. It's also to some third-party external sources, such as Twitter and WordPress. Data loss prevention policies allow you to control which connectors can be used together, and this can limit the chances of accidental data leakage. To give you an example, you may want to use Twitter to follow your customers. So you might create a little app or flow that pulls information from CRM, gets the customer details, and then uses the Twitter connector to follow those customers. But you could easily make a mistake, and instead of following the customers, you could actually post customer details. So these are the types of things that data loss prevention policies can help you avoid. Policies can be applied tenant-wide as well as to individual environments. So a good strategy here is to apply the most restrictive policy to the tenant to give you the most protection, but then to make exceptions for specific environments where there is a specific business need to use a given connector. Some connectors also have a more fine-grained control. For example, in the SQL Server connector, you can limit that to specific IPs, which would restrict the list of databases that were available. And for other connectors, just use the Twitter example again, you can limit use to specific actions. So you could disable the post action, but you could leave the follow action live. Moving on to application lifecycle management. So from a developer point of view, I think this is the most important aspect. So the first rule of ALM is use solutions. Okay, that's really fundamental. Solutions allow makers to neatly package all of the components and resources together, and that then allows you to import and export these solution containers, if you want to call them that, to other environments. If, for example, moving from a test to a live environment or from a dev to a test environment, but also it allows you to add them into source control. And source control is a very important tool that lets you manage your code base and your configurations. And it also allows makers to develop, for example, new features and still work on bug fixes in parallel without disrupting your potential to make a live deployment. So it means that you can take a branch of your code, you can work on a new feature, and then if while you're doing that, if somebody reports a bug, it means you've still got an untainted version of the live code in which to work on your bug fix. You can then deploy that through test into live, and it doesn't affect your feature development. Linked into that is the automated build and deployment processes using CI and CD, or continuous integration, continuous development. That has a number of advantages. It gives you a consistency of process across all of your apps. You can introduce quality gates so that, for example, a solution can't be moved into live until it's been signed off by QA or another testing authority. It also reduces the potential for manual errors. With the best will in the world, we're all human, and we make mistakes. So automating those processes are a really good way of cutting those down. As an example, you could be doing a new feature development. You can check in the code for your changes into source control. The solution would then be automatically checked for errors. If everything went to plan, then the solution would be built and deployed to a test environment. That would then allow you to have a quality gate. Once testing's been completed and signed off, the solution would then be promoted to the live environment, and that's very much an automated process and a repeatable automated process, which is important. At Bridgeall, we use Azure DevOps for this. There are other tools available, but we find Azure DevOps is a great option for that. It can run the full project lifecycle from identifying, tasks and tasks for new features, bug fixes, things like that, through sprint management to source control, to your building deployment pipelines, plus a lot more through test plans and other things as well. So we find it's a great tool. As we've already mentioned, having separate environments means that your development and your testing can be separated from your production and your live environments. This allows you to manage the different user groups that are involved in the process. In your dev environment, you'll have it'll be all developers with maker permission and perhaps admin permission on the dev environment. Once you start moving into the test environment, you have business users and the testers in there, and their permissions will be for user only, so they'll only be able to actually use the apps. They won't be able to change anything or make any environment updates. And similarly, with the live environment, you have separate data sources, and everybody that has access to the environment has the most limited permissions to prevent any accidental changes or issues occurring there. As an example of the ALM process, we recently engaged with Edrington, who were very keen to start using the Player platform. They could see the benefits that it would bring, and they were wanting to start using it to replace some legacy apps, but they were really keen to establish some solid ALM practices before they got going, just to help them manage that process of changeover. We worked together with them to set up some processes for source control and automated build and development pipelines. And they're now working their way through the list of apps with, I think they've got about 8 or 9 apps now entered into the process. So it's been really useful. We've managed to create those processes that are repeatable processes, and it means that they can now move forward with that app development. Finally, last but by no means least, from a governance perspective, is setting up the internal process that you need to help manage the platform. We've already touched on environment creation. It's good to have like a process to request new apps as well. This helps keep track of who's doing what and where, and it allows you to feed that information back into the whole pot. Sammy is going to be talking about some of the features of the Centre of Excellence. It means that you can feed all this information back in as part of your review processes to keep your make sure your tenant's kept healthy and also resource efficient. One of the things that we've recommended in the past is to create an app categorization scheme. We've gone for kind of a bronze, silver, gold. It means that both the users, when they're requesting apps, and the approvers, when they're looking at the various apps that are in scope, it means that everybody can work with the same criteria. A bronze app is, a personal productivity thing. It's all going to be in a single environment. There's no need for a Dataverse instance. There's no premium connectors going to be used, all the way up to your gold standard, which is your company-wide app or your mission-critical app. You're going to be wanting to create multiple environments. You pretty good chance you'll want to use Dataverse for that. There might be additional licensing requirements. And the kind of governance process runs through your full, change board. So it's very much a full fat governance and an ALM process. So I'd now like to hand over to Sami, who's going to discuss using the Centre of Excellence toolkit to help with monitoring the platform, and I'll leave you in his capable hands.
Thanks very much, Alan. So obviously Alan's gone over quite a few slides here to do with governance. You might be thinking it's quite involved and maybe even slightly overwhelming as well, and you might be wondering how the best way to go about having a bit of an overarching view of everything that's happening in your tenant. So Microsoft has released what's called a Centre of Excellence starter kit. The purpose of the starter kit is it's essentially a collection of components and tools that are designed just to help you get started, having an overarching view of everything that's happening across the Power Platform. It is a starter kit, so it's not a one-size-fits-all. The idea behind it, though, is that you can implement a host of solutions into your tenant, and then from there you can get a bit of a feel for what's going on across the tenant. You can then use these to expand out and develop either similar tools or expand on the existing tools that you have within the starter kit to make them more bespoke to the model that you have within your tenant. So just some of the tools that Microsoft have released, and some of these include things like being able to administer the platform with full visibility. So we've got dashboards which can sit within either model-driven applications within Power Apps, or alternatively, as you can see on screen there, a snippet from a Power BI report that again comes out the box when you install the Centre of Excellence starter kit. You can also govern sample audit processes, and you can also share best practices and welcome new Power Platform makers. When we say welcome new Power Platform makers, they would get sent an email when they sign up to the Power Platform process that comes out of the box. And with that email, they'll get a list of resources with the ability to then sign up to receive notifications for regular updates that Microsoft release, with sort of weekly updates that come out for all things Power Platform. These updates that come out are key. You'll notice pretty big changes that come out with these, and more often than not, it'll tend to be pretty big hitters that come out, come down the line every couple of weeks. Things that are a bit of a bugbear, and you'll tend to find that you'll Google them, find them on user forums, and you'll see that people are voting on them, and that tends to be the ones that you'll see changing coming down the line. So it is really important to keep on top of the changes that come out with those emails. The Centre of Excellence starter kit as well is a good opportunity now just to raise what we would recommend using a service account for. So when I say service account, what we would recommend is that there is one account that is managed by your global admins within the tenant, which is given a Power Apps per user license. I'll go on to speak about what the licensing model is for Power Apps later on in the deck, but it is important that the service account is allocated that license. The reason for that is that there are a number of applications that come with the starter kit which all use Dataverse, which is considered a premium connector, and to allow that many apps access to that, you would need a per user account to do that. So it makes sense to use what's called a service account, which is just one account which a team of people all have access to, and people can log into that whenever they need to go on and use elements of the starter kit. So the starter kit, as I mentioned, is broken down into a series of solutions. Alan's obviously spoke about what it means to have a solution and what that actually involves. The way to think of a solution is just a category of it's just a collection of components. So the first one I'd like to talk about is a core solution. So this will provide components for the admin functionalities to get you started with the Centre of Excellence. When you're installing the Centre of Excellence, it is important to do it in the order that they give you, because there is a reliance on some of the tools within the core solution that you need to install some of the other ones further down the line. The governance solution follows on from that, and that again is just to aid with auditing and all things compliance. So Alan had touched earlier about things like data loss prevention policies. So the solution for governance will help you with that. There will be tools there to make that data loss prevention journey a little bit easier. Some of the things that will involve is setting up data loss prevention policies, but before you hit the final button to actually provision that policy in place, it'll tell you which elements of the Power Platform are going to be affected, and that is really important. The reason that's important is because it will turn off any elements. So if you've got applications that were using connectors that you're now going to be blocking, or flows that are going to be using them, as soon as you put that policy in place, it will turn off those. Turn off those applications from use and turn off those flows. So it is important to have that final step in there, just to review that before you pull the trigger. The nurture solution, which is really key to enabling users across the business to have the right tools and processes. There's quite a lot, as you've probably seen already from the webinar today, there's quite a lot going on with the Power Platform. So it is key that you give your users the right tools and the right practices to do that. Again, this is not going to be a one size fits all. This will vary from company to company. So Microsoft will give you a starting point, but it is key that you take it from there and develop it to tailor it to your own needs. And again, that's something that Bridgeall can help with. We've installed the Centre of Excellence Starter Kit on a couple of occasions, most recently with Age Scotland, which is a little bit of a case study that I'll go on to speak about later on. The theming solution, which is great for allowing consistency. Most companies will have their own branding, whether that's images or colours, primary and secondary colours or fonts that they want to install. So there is a theming solution which will enable you to set a standard solution, set a standard theming, and that means any users that start creating Power Apps, they can start implementing that branding within their own apps. So there is a common theme running across everything that's happening within the business. Again, innovation backlog. So what we tend to find is that companies that come to us, they start off by having one process, but further down the line they tend to have other things that they know is going to be coming out of the woodwork once the first app has been sort of proved out that they're happy with the concept of it. So the innovation backlog is a great way of having a tool in place that as soon as it's installed, users actually have that entry point where they can submit ideas for certain applications and flows that they think need building within the organisation. Alan mentioned earlier on about citizen development, so it's really key that the end users are involved in the process of rolling out solutions. So it's great if users actually have that entry point, that they are the ones that are submitting things in the first place. And then finally, there is the Autolog solution as well, which is a great way to enable such auditing events, such as how many times the apps are being launched, being able to delete apps and delete flows as well. So I'm going to break out into a little bit of a demo just now, just to show you some of the tools. So bear with me just now. Hopefully everyone can see that. So the first tool I would like to show you is one of the Canvas applications that's come out, which is for changing permissions on applications. So this can be done while an application is live, or it can be done if a user leaves the organisation. So I touched earlier on about having a service account, which is a great way of developing applications, because you've got one account and you shouldn't really be deleting that account or removing any licensing from that account while sort of applications are in development. If, however, though, you have users that are doing it from their own account, what you'll tend to find is you can sometimes have what's called orphaned apps when users leave the organisation or when their licensing is removed from them. So this application will actually let you reassign the permissions on applications. So you can either do it, so you can break it down by environment. So if I click on environment, you can see that all the applications by environment And you can see if you click on the default one, which Alan's showed you earlier on, we can see that the applications that we've got, this is just a test tenant that we're using. So we've been building across all the developer ones and also on the default one as well, purely for test purposes. You can also break it down by owner. So again, if I click on my own name, you can see some of the tools that we've been developing. Or again, if I click on the orphaned ones, what I might want to do is just reassign something to myself. So if I just click on it and add the permissions, you can see my name's already showing up there. So if I just hit save, and then you'll see that this will drop out the orphaned app stack, and then it would jump into the owner stack for myself. So quite an easy way of doing that, but again, it's a much easier way to show you an overarching view of everything that's going on across all your applications and flows. Everything that you get within the starter kit, you can do elsewhere. However, this is making it so much easier for you. You can it just makes everything a little bit easier and brings everything together and makes it a bit more manageable. This next tool is one of the dashboards that's come out, and this is like a model-driven application. So again, this is just giving you an overview of which application makers we have, which ones are the most active ones. So you can see the service account that we have, which is Power User Admin. That's the most common one, and then it's broken down into the different makers. Again, we've got it broken down into different environments, and then again at the bottom we have all the different applications here and who the app owners are as well. And then down the left-hand navigation, you can see that that's broken down further. We can click on things like apps or flows, connectors as well is a great one. And then from here, you can delve a little bit deeper, and you can start looking into a bit more of an auditing for each of the connectors if you want to run that through a bit more of a deep dive of an audit process. And then the final tool I would like to show you is a training one. So this is more about nurturing your colleagues. So what we can do is we can create like training events. So what I'll do is I'll just show you a process. So this is like the admin view that the guys would have to create new events to begin with. So if I just put in some information here and choose the time. So and then I'll add a picture. And once I'm happy with that, I'll create the event. And then this is the end user view. So you can see there's no events here at all. If I just refresh this window, you'll see that there are now events. There is one event that I can now sign up to, which is a Power Platform training event. So I click into it, gives me all the information, and I can just register for that event. And then what should happen once I've registered is I should hopefully, with a bit of luck, get an email. Yeah. So Power Automate is running a workflow which is sending an email just to say that you are now registered for this event. I purposely chose this tool to show you that it's not the end result. Personally speaking, I would maybe like that to send a calendar invite rather than an email, and you could just sign up and it would go directly into your calendar. But again, that's just an example of how you can sort of branch out and you can extend these to make it more suitable for your users. Some users might not like the calendar event, they might prefer an email, so they can search and go back to it a little bit easier. So I'll just share back the slide deck again. So the next part I would like to move on to is for the training and adoption. So we have what's called super users, and the idea behind super users are that it's like end users that are respected amongst their peer group and they get extra training. The purpose in the extra training really so they can just assist in like adoption efforts, support peers through training, so it's almost a trainer type thing, and they can obviously serve as sort of ongoing person to answer questions for solution delivery. They're great for merging that, for bridging the gap from department to department as well. If you have super users that can bridge that gap, it helps a lot. It helps everything when it comes to rollout. The business users that we have, what we would imagine the business users to be is the people that have got access to the key resources and tools. So they would be expected to be playing the integral part of like helping change the culture and obviously driving the success as well. They're right at the heart of the operation. That would form the business user section. The champions, some people might have champions already in their organisation for other purposes, and these guys are really the sort of same sort of thing. They would be helping build, grow and sustain the rollout of all things M365 and Dynamics 365. This would be done just by promoting the benefits, understanding the technology as well, and we would really expect the champions to be passionate about the role that they play as well, and also about the technology that they have. The developers are key to helping the organisation build like sort of people-centric, cross-platform productivity solutions. And when I say cross-platform, what I really mean is things like integrating common tools such as SharePoint and Teams. But the reason, the way that you would integrate them would be creating Power Automate workflows, and that's where the developers would really come in. By doing that, they would be expected to sort of drive and help drive adoption and solution wins as well. And that would really help sort of redefine the way that you would collaborate. And then the IT professionals, so there's actually a bit of a lesser reliance when it comes to the Power Platform on the IT professionals as there maybe are for sort of other systems within the organisation. Their role is really just to help make sure that the modern workplace solution is actually available and connected at all times. Things like resetting passwords and stuff, that would still sit, unless you have a self-service tool in place, that would sit with the IT professional. But the reliance in terms of being able to access the applications, that would sit within the sort of developer role, and they would be the key ones that would aid with that section of it. So there are sort of training and adoption virtual training days. Some of these tools are free, things like LinkedIn Learning, some of that can be free. The Microsoft 365 learning pathways as well. There are other things that we have as well. In Bridgeall, we've got things like App in a Day and Admin in a Day as well, where it's like a full day session, and we would run through essentially like a starter's guide on how to roll out, or how to create your first application, or how to administer your Power Platform as well. And again, this is some of the things we've worked with other companies before as well. In terms of organisational culture, there will be a bit of a change and a bit of a shift with that is expected for rolling out the Power Platform. It really does involve having a good structure in place with the ALM that Alan spoke about earlier on for testing. Again, other systems might not have that infrastructure in place where they have the testing, but you do, if your ALM is organised and developed correctly, you will have that section where you can develop, push it into a test environment that's sole purpose is for testing, and then you can push that into live once that's ready to go through that process. More training and demonstrations might be required as well, but again, you do have that good structure in place where you can keep going through that repeatable process and get through that. The final section I'd like to talk about is licensing. So what we're really looking to discuss is available licenses, Power Platform licensing being the first one. So Power Platform licensing, the Power App licensing is actually changing in the next couple of coming weeks, and it's moving to a cheaper model. Believe it or not, it's not often we get to say that, but Power Apps is moving to a slightly cheaper model. It's actually halving in price. So the Power Apps per app plan will be priced at £3.75 per app. Sorry, per app per month. And what we mean by per app is it's important to understand this distinction between per user and per app. So with the per app plan, what you can do is your license is actually associated to the app rather than the user. So for example, if you associate 10 per app licenses to an application, any 10 users within the organisation with a Power Apps, just a standard Power Apps plan, can go in and use that application at any given time concurrently. If you, for example, though, you don't want to do that, you want to go for the per user plan, which you can see is sort of 4 times the price. That means that any user can use can use multiple apps at any time. There's no restrictions on how many users can use the apps. It's a more traditional way of licensing someone. It would be associated to the user rather than the application. An example of when you might want to use the per app one would be if you're only building one application in your organisation and you know that only 10 people are going to be using that, it would make sense to only use 10 per app plans rather than going down the per user plan. If though, for example, you want 3 or 4 applications that all use the same data set in the same environment, it might actually make a bit more sense to go to the per user plan, and then you don't have that restriction if you then want to start building more and more applications on top of that. Moving on to Power BI licensing, the first option you get is free. So the Power BI licensing model will give you the ability to develop your own workspace content where you can tap into some of the data that sits in the organisation. However, you won't be able to share that data out. You can obviously still screen grab it and push it into presentations, but in terms of actually sharing data and sharing dashboards and stuff, you would then need to move on to the Power BI Pro license, which you can see is £7.50 per user per month. That would then give you the ability to subscribe to dashboards and share them across other users who also have a similar license. You also have the Power BI Premium licensing, which you can see is a little bit more expensive. And then what you have is that's broken down into 2 sections, so you can do it per user or per capacity. And really the only difference is essentially if you get to 150 per user licenses, you're going to be at the stage where you're at this the sort of barrier to breaching into the per capacity one. So you may then want to say, well, actually, is it cheaper for me to move to per capacity? I know I've got a set amount per month, and then I only need to go to, I can get up to unlimited dashboards across unlimited users within the organisation. Power Automate licensing. Again, I've broke it down into 2 sections here. So the first one is just for your standard sort of cloud-based flows that you're using, the most common ones. So again, we have it broken down into per user and per flow. Per user plans, the £11.30 per month gives you access to the sort of premium connectors, and you can create unlimited flows accessing these connectors. Alternatively, you can go to the per flow one, which is just a capacity based one. So you've got a standard set amount there, and that gives you the sort of 5 flows per month as well. And then again, we've broke it down into Power Automate, the sort of RPA ones and the desktop flows. This is a fairly new feature that Power Automate has released. It's free if you want to use it for your own workflows, and that's if you've got a Windows 10 licensing. Although it does get a little bit more expensive again if you want to start using it for more of a company-wide licensing, where you want to license individual users with a more premium functionality. And then the final bit of licensing I'd like to talk about is Power Virtual Agents. Again, there is a free option where users can start using Power Virtual Agents within teams, so you can associate it to a certain team, and you can create your chatbots to which other users can use. Again, that might be useful for internal questions if you wanted to create like a HR one to answer questions on holidays or pay slips or payroll. Alternatively, you do have again a chatbot which will give you a bit more functionality, which you can then use across things like Power Apps portals, or you can push onto your own company website as well, and that information would all just feed into your Dataverse data source, and that then can be used for you can use internal Power Apps that can leverage the same data from that as well. So it's a great way of users being able to, so external users being able to feed into the same data repository as internal users. So I'm just going to hand you back over to Alan to run through his first case study, which is on Edrington.
Thanks, Sonny. So it was really just to summarise what I mentioned earlier. We engaged with Edrington to discuss the Power Platform ALM. They'd identified Power Platform as being a solution to updating a lot of the legacy apps that they had. We then worked with them to create some ALM processes, committing code to source control, creating environments, updating the pipelines, and we think it's worked really well for them. As I mentioned, they're now about 8 or 9 apps into the process, so it's been gradually gaining traction there. And we think that's resulted in a more cost-effective solution for them in terms of app development. Certainly a reduction in the amount of manual effort, and an increase in the accuracy and also the operational efficiency. Things take less time to do, so I think that's been really helpful. I think Sammy was going to have a quick mention on the Age Scotland process that he's been going through. I'll hand back over.
Yeah, and just to summarise, yeah, very similar sort of setup. Age Scotland were very proactive and quick to identify that the benefits of using the Power Platform, but they wanted to make sure that they had that sort of foresight to make sure that everything was locked down and they were doing everything by best practice. So Bridgeall installed the Centre of Excellence starter kit for them, and we've been having consultation meetings as well, trying to get sort of one a week or one every couple of weeks, to help them develop their first Canvas application, which is almost ready to be rolled out as a phase 1 to certain users within the organisation to test. So that's the final slide for today. There are some follow-up options as well. Do you want to pick up on this section?
Yeah, great. Thanks for that, Sammy. So yeah, conscious of time there's obviously been quite a lot of information been passed out there. Just the last couple of slides here. In terms of follow-on options, depending on where you are with your kind of Power Platform journey, we offer a number of different things. So we have a Power Platform briefing, so a kind of up to 2-hour briefing, just to really go into a wee bit more detail, kind of similar to today. What things could you put in place? How can you kind of benefit from the Power Platform? Why should you implement it? We also offer the training days, so the kind of app in a day, admin in a day. So if you're already started with Power Platform, you're looking to get some users up to speed, or you're looking to get your administrators up to speed and how to manage this, then that's also an option. And then finally, our Power Platform Quickstart. So we can get a package of work with you that can set up the Centre of Excellence, help you set up the kind of application lifecycle management, and give you some consultancy days to kind of help you on your way for starting the first lot of development. So just moving on now onto the last questions. So if there are any questions, obviously aware of the time as well, but feel free to put your hand up, and we can come to you and take you off your mute, or if you want to, you can ask the question on the chat as well. I see Edward's got a question here just about the recording. So yes, we'll be sharing the recording of the meeting as well as the slides after the event as well.
Okay, I think we're probably better to kind of wrap up. But yeah, just wanted to say very quickly, just when we we'll be sending out the recording as you just mentioned. We just want to thank everybody for joining us this morning, and thank you to Graham, Alan and Sammy for a really informative presentation. We hope you did find it really useful. Yeah, in the meantime, I know it's just because I'm a wee bit cautious at times, so if there are any questions, please feel free to contact us. We'll be sending all the details out shortly anyway. And yeah, we hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you so much.